Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So the new handicap marks came out yesterday. We've taken a little bit of time to get this video recorded, but here we go. Let's look at some of those new handicap marks. Starting off with Doyen Quest, who's dropped £1 to 133. Now, in my previous video, I mentioned that these owners or the executors of the estate aren't doing a great job with placing these horses. I do wonder whether they're doing something a little bit more drastic sort of thing. Instead of being careful and trying to get a horse quite nicely handicapped for a race, they're trying to get a horse very well handicapped for a race. For example, Heltenham, who comes up later in this video, and Doyen Quest. Now, Doyen Quest, let's talk about Doyen Quest. Could have been running at like the Cheltenham Festival. They could have been aiming him to get him in the Coral Cup. They could have been aiming to potentially go for the Pertemps final, get him qualified for the Pertemps final, earlier on in the season, etc. But instead, they've gone and got him dropped a few more pounds by running multiple races poorly. And then what they do is once they've done that, they then go, now we're going to run in a race that isn't worth 85 grand, but it's worth 15 that we know we will win, rather than running in the 85 and being, we hope we can win, we think he'll go very close, but he could finish second, he could finish third, he could finish fourth, depending on what turns up. Similar to what Lemilos did, for example. He ended up going off, 5 to 4 last time out in a handicap and won it. And, they were really confident that he was going to win that, rather than having aimed him at like the Ultima or what else? The other race, I think he should have been aimed at the Coral Gold Cup. There was a few races that Lemilos should have been aimed at, or could have been aimed at, that he would have had a big chance in, but would he have definitely won those? Maybe not definitely. Whereas I think that the Skeltons might be trying to do that with a few of theirs, that they're going, we're going to get this horse so that we definitely win a race with him, rather than we might win a race. And Doyen Quest could be one of those, with this race in mind, at Cheltenham in April. So it's in April. Yes, you might get some of the Pertemps horses there, but I don't think you'll get as many as, and certainly not the Irish horses that you would get in the Pertemps final. It's worth 13 grand, and it's another 13 grand that they could add to their pot. If he'd run in the Pertemps, would he have won it? Probably not. I think he might have. I still think he would have run okay, but maybe not have won it. So maybe they're looking for winners that will add some prize money to the pot as well, rather than we hope they're going for races that they will definitely win. And Doyen Quest, if he turns up in this race in April at Cheltenham, he would be one of those that I think now's the time to get on him back at Cheltenham over 3 mile. So he dropped £1 to 133 after clearly didn't have the speed for his run at Kempton. Keep an eye out for him where he next goes. Next horse I want to talk about is Barlow. So away from the Dan Skelton yard, Barlow, who is he still with Nicky Henderson? Nicky Henderson. I don't totally understand his last amount effort, because he was running in a grade 2 off the back of 2 pulled up efforts. Pulled up at Windsor and pulled up at Cheltenham. Not totally sure why they therefore then went for a grade 2 at Kempton. He was never going to be good enough for that, and he ran accordingly. He was very disappointing out the back of the field. He was the only one that didn't finish the race. But that does mean he's dropped £2 to 130. Now, he actually won earlier this season in November off 130 at Ascot, beating Bad. Well, Bad, we've obviously been a big supporter of, and finally got his day in the sun at Kempton at the weekend, winning with a mark of 125 and went up to 134. So Bad is actually rated £11 higher than when finishing second to Barlow. And Barlow is off the same mark as when winning that race. So Barlow, in theory, is very well handicapped now. After winning that race, they dropped him to hurdles, so you can forgive that run. They then went for a very competitive race at Windsor, pulled up in that. You can just about forgive that run. And then they dropped him in trip and ran him in a grade 2. That wasn't where he should have been running. Now back off a mark of 130, though, it does mean he gets in this race here. It's a 2 mile 2. Bearing in mind he won over 2 mile 3 at Ascot. It's a novice handicap chase, which he still is. And it's for horses rated 0 to 130. This is just after the Cheltenham Festival. He's rated 130. He would get in here, go to Kempton. Yeah, I don't see any negatives other than he ran disappointingly at Kempton, but that was in a grade 2. Imagine dropping from a grade 2 into a class 3 novices handicap. I think he would turn up there and I think he would bounce back. That's off that 130 mark. I think he's nicely handicapped. Just doesn't want to be messed around like they have done with him. Next horse I want to talk about is Samarive, who has dropped also down to a mark of 130. He dropped, what did he drop? £3 to 130 over fences and over hurdles. Now, his disappointing run actually came over hurdles, where he was 8th of 12, beaten 16 lengths, when sent off 20 to 1. Now, I want to go back over fences with him. His effort at Ascot, it wasn't great when he finished 4 for 4, this one here. However, his previous run before that, he at least finished second behind Supreme Gift at Ascot over 2 miles 3. And that actually came off a handicap mark of 142. He's suddenly been dropped really quite drastically. And is now down to a mark of 130 over both fences and hurdles. So he's £12 lower than when he was second. He's £10 lower than when he finished 4 for 4. In a decent race. It was actually the race that Barlow won. Bad was second. Watpath was third. I mean, Barlow and Bad, I thought, were both well handicapped that day. And Samarive just didn't run up to scratch. But that was off a mark of 140. If he turns back up off a mark of 130, you would give him a much bigger chance. Especially if they go to Sandown as well. There is this novice handicap chase on the 8th of March, so it's quite soon. It's over 2.5 miles at Sandown. So why would that suit? It's 2.5 miles, which is what he's been running over. It is a novice handicap chase for horses rated 0 to 130, so he would be right at the top of the handicap, so he'd be taking on inferior opposition in theory. It's also at Sandown. We look at his Sandown form. He's got a win here in December 2021. He finished 9th in Imperial Cup. He won at Sandown in April 2022 and then finished 3rd in April 2023 behind Krabilli and Borbali in front of Isio. That's a good performance. They were off, I think he ran, the last time he ran at Sandown, he was running off a mark of 143. He's won off 137. He's also won off 130. That looks really obvious to me. This 0 to 130. I think he would win this comfortably. If he bounced back to the level of form that he has previously shown. This has got to be where they go with Samarive. Moving on to Cheltenham, back to this Skelton angle. Dropped £2 to 134. Now, this is one of those. Excuse me. This is one of those that I thought he would have been running in the Greatwood Gold Cup at the weekend. He's not. The Greatwood Gold Cup is worth 57 grand to the winner. He won it last year, beating Candu Kid, who's gone on to win the Ladbroke Trophy or the Coral Gold Cup, or whichever one it's called now. Formerly the Hennessy. Good performance, therefore, from Cheltenham, winning that off a mark of 130. He's only rated 134 now. The angle is that if he turned up there off a £4 higher mark, would he definitely win that race? Maybe not. Maybe there is something in that race that's well handicapped and progressive. Whereas if they wait and they turn up in this race at the end of March, it's still worth 20 grand to win. And would they win this off a £2 lower mark than when sent off the even money favourite? Probably. You can see that this race only attracted 6 runners last year. Him and Sir Psycho pulled well clear of Gunsight Ridge. It wasn't the deepest of races. He went off even money favourite. He's off a £2 lower mark. You would be putting this as, I would be very disappointed if they didn't win this race at Newbury at the end of March, whereas I'd be hopeful he could win the Greatwood Gold Cup at Newbury at the weekend, which he obviously isn't in. So yeah, maybe this is what they're doing, the Skeltons. They're targeting races that they can definitely win with horses, rather than they might win. Next horse I want to talk about is Your Own Story, who's interesting actually. He dropped £2 to 125 now. After finishing 5th in the Ida Chase. It says 9th. That's because he was DQ'd. He was disqualified after the race because the jockey forgot to weigh in. Never totally sure how they forget to weigh in. So he finished 5th, dropped £2. Where do you go with him now then? Now that he's dropped to 125, he can get back into this Tim Maloney handicap steeplechase. He finished 2nd in this a couple of years ago, behind... I can't think who he was behind that day. Equus Dreamer. Only got beat half a length that day off a mark of 124. He went off the 13-8 favourite. I think this is where we've got to see Your Own Story. It's an easy than what he's been competing in. It's easier than an Ida Chase. It's easier than a Welsh National. It's easier than a Scottish Borders National. It's easier than a Cumberland Handicap Chase. Drop him back slightly in class to this Class 3, win that, and then hopefully end up in the Scottish National. So that's what they should do with Your Own Story. And finally, the last one that I want to talk about is Sans Brouet, who's dropped £4 to 130. That means he's back down to the same handicap mark as when winning this race last year, the Red Rum Handicap Chase at the Cheltenham at the Aintree Festival. Beat Saint-Ouen, beat Path de Rue. The right horses were behind. It was a good race. Get Bryony back on board, and yeah, hopefully Bryony can get him back to the form that he showed last season. He looked so unexposed here, and potentially much better than what he was here. You know, he was winning this race, just his 4th run in the UK. You thought, oh, how far could he go? Could he end up even being a champion chase horse next season? Certainly hasn't worked out this season, but has dropped significantly in the handicap now, back down to that 130 mark that you would be very hopeful of a big run if he turned back up in the Red Rum Handicap Chase in April. So then my horses to follow from the handicap marks changes this week. Definitely, I think I really like them all, to be honest. I think I found the perfect races for all of them, to be honest, and I'd be really disappointed if they didn't all run in those races.